They've got to create a service that's a trebuchet service so that I can get around.
I'd like to order a trebuchet to your door.
That's true. Amazon probably sells them. I'll have to check. So, Alex, for the last 2 segments, we've been talking about my vacation, but you also went on a longer trip, a longer sojourn.
Did.
Yes.
I think it might have been longer time-wise, but it was definitely longer mileage-wise.
Yes.
I took my first trip to the West Coast and went to Los Angeles.
Beautiful.
TLDR, had a good time. But as far as things for the show that we're talking about, one of the things I thought of there was interesting to me because being from the East Coast, the West Coast, and specifically California where we were, very different terrain. So hits on kind of what you were talking about, terrain differences anyways. LA is kind of a desert. Very brown, very flat for the most part. But one of the things I mentioned to you was that from our hotel where we were staying, we could, it was very hazy a lot of the time while we were there.
Sure.
Desert, heat, haze, all that good stuff. But, our hotel was next to LAX. And looking at our window, I didn't realize for about 2 days that we could see downtown LA from our hotel.
Oh, you just couldn't see it for the first 2 days.
Yeah, the haze was heavy enough that I did not notice it.
Yeah.
Until the haze started lifting and I went, hey, did you know we could see a hotel from here? And Ray goes, I did not know that. Or we could see, downtown LA. And then a couple days later, you know what I could see even more of? When the haze got even less heavy?
What?
There's mountains out there too.
Oh, fun times.
So I could see both from the hotel. I have pictures somewhere of it. And it was I did not know for at least 3 or 4 days that there was both a city and a set of hills or mountains beyond that city.
Yeah.
Because of how the haze was. And that got me kind of thinking about something too. With games, it's how far can you see in your games?
Right.
Your terrain and the climate dictates that a lot. But you don't really think of that when you're sitting a couple stories up in the middle of a city. It's how far can you actually see there?
Yeah.
And what does it look like compared to where you've been? So that in a video game would be the LOD, the rendering distance, for instance, where, my rendering distance in LA was not that far.
Right. You had map fog.
Even 9 stories up on the hotel where I was, I could not see that far.
Yeah. So what you're kind of talking about is the idea of the bird's eye view of the world that you have, and then getting onto the ground level, essentially, of what the world is. That it's a different perspective, right? Very
much so. And in doing so, it's 9 stories up, you can see a fair distance, but on the ground level in a big city like that, you really can't see very far. And even some of the people, one of our drivers, because we took Uber, because we're not driving in LA traffic. Fuck that.
No, don't do that.
One of our drivers was talking with us about how he's lived there a pretty long time, but he still goes places driving for Uber or whatever he does for rides and stuff that he's never been to parts of town. He'd be he was saying he took a trip, he dropped someone off and I don't remember where, a couple hours away, and he just, at the end of his day, and he's I just got a hotel, I keep all the stuff in my car, so if I need to stay somewhere, I can. It's I just spent the night there and got up, went to the beach in the morning, and, enjoyed a new scenery that I'd never been in.
Huh. Interesting.
So it's even people that live there, they're the city is so big that you will actively find, if you go out of your way than your normal routes, you're going to find places you've never been.
Right. Right. It's the stuff off the beaten path that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And not even off the beaten path, just off
for
your
you.
path.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And so you could absolutely set an entire campaign in one city. And I know people have done that.
Sure.
But real life, for instance, I know my way to work, but do I know the town I live in very well? Not really.
Yeah.
I could go out and even in this smaller city than LA, I could find plenty of places I've never been and don't know anything.
Sure. Absolutely.
Even for you, living in the backwoods where you live.
It's true. Yeah.
It is
It's
kind of
rural.
backwoods.
It's very rural here.
I'm sure there are places in that town you have never been.
Oh, there are probably roads that I have not traveled down.
One of the days we were there, we took a walk around the town.
Sure.
And we walked up, down under a bridge, around. We walked a bunch in LA because it saved on getting Ubers, and we didn't have a car because $5 for gas is crazy. And so we walked around it, and there were just small neighborhoods that we walked through that, super cool and whatnot. One of the other things that I think I wanted to hit on there too was the fact that it was very diverse in LA. And coming from the East Coast, it's very white here where we are.
It's a very monocultural society overall.
Kind of, yeah. It doesn't have a lot. Like, we have some people here, obviously, that
I meet people from all over the world, but, it's not common. It's not common.
I mean, we have people that live here who definitely have their restaurants, for instance, or it's typically the only ones I see. So it's like, we have our Japanese restaurant or Thai food, and those are generally not run by white people, which is probably for the best, honestly. The diversity here is not very big. So going out there, it's not so much that it's a culture shock, as I would say, as it is just English being the primary language was not what I encountered.
Sure.
And I don't speak other languages, so it was groups of people that would walk by where we walked by that were just talking other languages, and you just notice it because it's not what you're used to. And so setting in a city as big as like LA, if you were to set a game in that or have a whole game run in a city, especially a very big hub, let's say Waterdeep, for instance, if you're going with 5e, you're going to encounter a lot of languages and people of different cultures that you may not be familiar with. Let's say you wander into the equivalent of Chinatown in your game, or the Elven district. It's like, I don't speak Elven. I don't know anything going on, but they'll probably know your language, especially if it's common.
Sure.
Because it helps with commerce and trade. But, it's very different.
Yeah.
And so, even just a couple miles away from, where you're used to is just very different for you in that case as well. And it's just really interesting to, be able to see all that and then go and try and explore. And, can you imagine exploring a city in a game? And you're like, I've only been to these couple places, and it's like, I've been fairly far, but in the span of how big a city is, as big as LA, oh yeah, I know this 20-mile kind of area, maybe.
Sure.
You've gone to and from out of the city and back in, but you kind of only know a couple routes. So you want to take something else entirely different. You're going to find yourself in an area you've never been. And it might have a completely different set of people than you're used to, obviously. A completely different culture and dialect and people speaking a different language as a commonality. And that's just crazy.
Yeah.
I know it's not crazy, but it's crazy to think of that as being just normal. In the sense that this has been here.
Right.
This is not weird. You just haven't been here.
It's like the hidden city kind of thought process of, there's all this stuff that's going on that you just don't see on a regular basis. So you don't take it into account most of the time. Kind of
so it's you're not used to it because you've never been there. And then so you've been there. Maybe you mark that down. Can you imagine trying to run a game, have a game where people just constantly are going to different parts of the city they've never been to due to different things? And this is where talking to the Uber drivers was really interesting because they were like, yeah, I constantly am going places that I might not be familiar with because the job takes me there. It's people want to go to these places. I might not be familiar.
Right.
But I get to see a new part of town. And that I think is really interesting because it becomes, these are the places I would normally go and frequent, but now I'm frequenting all sorts of places. I'm just going wherever business tells me to go.
Yeah. There's something that I notice when I'm traveling, just to a new place is that there's this transition that you get from the place that I am familiar with to, we're in unexplored territory. If you we were traveling down south So, like, there's a part where it's like, oh yeah, I know, like, how to get here to here. Oh, now I have to get out a map. Now I need to know where, like, what exit I'm taking, because now I'm in a new territory. And then coming back, you're, like, trying to track that route down until a certain point where you're like, oh, I know where to go from here. Because, like, now I'm back in familiar setting. So I understand
exactly.
that. So it's that transfer back.
And it's one of those weird things too, because as you said, you're familiar with like here to here, but then after that you might not know because you haven't gone past there.
Sure.
But then even on that route from here to here, from A to B, before you get to C, if you were to take any road off of anywhere from A to B, you might not know where you are.
Yeah.
You're like, I've never been off this exit. Let's take this exit and see where it goes. See the small towns or city or whatever lies this way.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but I had this idea for, like, a campaign that was it was all just going to be a city. It was like, you know, probably a D&D kind of city, but it was just all going to be in the city itself. We're not really exploring beyond it, but the city was going to be really fleshed out. And even the back roads, even like the residential districts and all of that, like, you know, in the back roads. And anyway, my thought process was that you kind of populate this with stuff that is going on in the city that can be encountered, but you have your party go in and then they kind of determine what they want to do, and that they'll come across stuff by just going out into the city and see what happens, and kind of like the chaos of like how that's going to interact with their story and what roads that's going to take them down, because nothing is prescribed. But that there be plenty of stuff on the back roads, that there's maybe there are like zombies that are being locked up in some of the houses because there's an outbreak, but no one was around to really mention it. So if you get down certain aisles and you hear banging on the doors, that might be something that's happening there. But then if you encounter them and they get out, that can spread, so you have to be aware of that. That there can be thieves guilds that are down one alley and they're waiting for a contact, and you might inadvertently be the contact they think they're going to have if you go down certain roads. And so that the entire thing can be very story rich and give like a lot of possibilities in how they interact with each other, but it can be completely done inside of a city with absolutely nothing outside of it. Really,
definitely think that's viable too.
Yeah.
For instance, you could, mapping out a city is intense. There's a lot there to do, especially like depending how big the city is. Like, again, we could see downtown LA from us, but by car it was about probably 40 minutes away.
Ooh, yeah.
You know? Because LA. So, like, walking several hours.
Yeah.
Like, even for us to go to the beach, we went to the Santa Monica Pier. Our Uber there was probably 15, 20, 30 minutes maybe.
Okay, yeah.
But, like, walking, it was, like, 5 miles.
Yeah.
And, it would have taken an hour or hour and a half, 2 hours to walk to the beach from where we were.
Yeah.
And it didn't look like it was that far away on the map. And I'm like, I may not know how big the scale of this is, even though I'm looking at it. But, like, it's like, it does not look that far away.
Yeah.
But, like, it was, like, 2 hours walking.
Yeah. Well, LA is laid out a little differently than, like, Manhattan. So...
But yeah, it's all grid, though.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Exactly. Although there's freeways. There's a lot of those, too. But,
right.
The streets are all grids, and that makes it really easy to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking if you did a thing like that with the city, what you could even do is you make your city map, you designate different district parts of it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is downtown, maybe this is like an elven district or a dwarf district, depending whatever setting you're using, or maybe this is like Chinatown or the Latino town.
Sure.
The Mexican side of town. Whatever, that's fine. But maybe you have points of interest scattered about.
Sure.
And you could even use like a point with a radius around it, where different like parts, depending on the size of the radius, maybe this point of interest has a sphere of, a size that this big around this area is where it happens. But maybe it intersects with another area, for instance.
Okay.
So you have, this is Thieves Guild, but this is also another Thieves Guild, and here is this slice of rival. Like,
sure.
This street here is like contentious between two different Thieves Guilds from different parts of town.
Yeah.
So you could even do stuff like that with spheres of influence or events going on, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You could
Which
do
would be
something like
interesting,
that,
because
yeah.
then you could do factions and stuff.
Yeah, you could even do faction control, similar to like what they did in like Saints Row, stuff like that, where
Oh, yeah.
districts that you have to take control of and all of that, and
Yeah.
liberate. So you could do that. That would be interesting. Yeah, no, I think the thing is that cities are hubs. There's a lot of like open terrain. Like in the United States, is a good example. Is that you have like these like 100-something miles of really not a lot that's there.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of
Especially
open
out
space.
west.
Yeah, especially out west. And then you come across a city and it's like everybody's here. It's like in this one small space. Yeah.
Yeah, like especially when we were flying to LA, we flew over the Rockies and just part of the Mojave, I assume, the desert there.
Yep.
And there's just parts of it, even going 500 miles per hour in an airplane at 34,000 feet, where you just see nothing but sand and canyons and desert, and it's like there's nothing out here.
There's no one there. Yeah,
and there can't be, because the terrain does not. The terrain did not make it so that there could be anything out there.
Right.
So it's like there's nothing there but canyon. It's like it saw a single road snaking through a canyon at one point. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's a reason that it's so sparse, is because having a community and a place where you can actually thrive and survive requires that all of you have your stuff together at that point.
Right.
So if you're gonna have a town, it's gonna be big enough to sustain having a town. You're not just gonna be like, oh yes, I built my house an hour away from the city, out in the middle of the desert. That doesn't make sense. Where are you going to get your shit? You're not going to grow your own food in the desert.
Right. Now, this actually got me to think, kind of off topic, but in similar vein. Can you imagine a civilization, like if you had like your sci-fi setting, a civilization that actually sprung up with like teleporter technology? Because if they actually did, they probably wouldn't need the close proximity to one another in order to, so that they could just like keep going through portals and just go anywhere else on the planet. You wouldn't actually have cities, probably like the way you think about them.
Maybe not. No.
You'd have them.
Depends on how common that teleporter technology was. Was it personal?
Right.
Or is it you have to have like a community to support that?
Right. Yeah.
Because like you'd still need the infrastructure for the power or whatever it requires.
Yeah, that's true. You'd still need something central.
So maybe you just have smaller towns that are like based on ideals at that point,
Sure.
It's like your shaker communities that's based around this set of ideals.
Mm-hmm.
And they build their communities together and have a portal they maintain so they can go do their stuff, transport stuff, and bring back all the stuff they need. Well, that might make more sense in that setting. So you wouldn't have giant sprawling cities. You'd have disparate, smaller settlements of like-minded individuals, I think.
But then also not isolated, because you'd have easy access to other places too. But I could see where you'd still have like some hubs, but they would be a lot smaller, and there'd be more of them that were scattered throughout. But anyway, just a thought process for that. In a world where teleporter technology is there, the idea of having close proximity to avoid, massive transit and transportation becomes a lesser concern for you. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where you have to travel places by car and plane.
Or plane, or boat,
trains. Or horseback, or with your feet. Sometimes you have to travel there with your feet. Or get shot out of a catapult. Sometimes that works too. Anyway. Trebuchet, yeah. They've got to create a service that's a trebuchet service so that I can get around.
I'd like to order a trebuchet to your door.
That's true. Amazon probably sells them. I'll have to check.
Not at the scale that I need to.
You need something pretty long. You want to take all of your luggage with you on the trebuchet. This feels like the kind of future technology that Futurama would come up with. Trebuchet transportation. Yeah. Like the tubes. It's a series of tubes. What do you think you would take into games now thinking about when you either play or when you're running a campaign?
Just how diverse it is between the environment and the people both. I think.
Sure.
Something to keep in mind. Your small towns might not be that diverse, but your large cities are going to be just because of how the city brings people together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's like they don't come together because they're all, humans who want to hang out together. They come together because the city provides things they need, so it's going to attract other people too that
Sure.
want to do business or want to live there or seeking the security of the city, perhaps. That's definitely something to keep in mind when you're building fantasy cities or game cities or world building in general, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good thing to think about because there's probably, almost in any setting that you make, there's likely going to be stuff that you did not take into consideration that's in that world that can be fleshed out upon even in the moment. Your party stumbles into an area that you don't have readily available. You can build on that very easily instead of just saying, no, there's nothing here. Maybe there is stuff there.
There might not be much going on there, but there's still stuff there.
There's still stuff there. You can, even if it's just for color, just a little bit of fluff going on in there. Just like, I kind of hate the idea of like going to a certain section of town and essentially the GM just kind of puts an under construction sign in the whole area of town, like just like yet to be rendered, just right here.
Sounds fun to me.
There's nothing here. Oh yeah, this whole section of town, it's just under construction right now. It's just a big open area. We're just building stuff. Come back
partially
later.
Constructed buildings and nobody there.
Just partially constructed buildings. Yeah, just open land. We're gonna put a parking lot here later. Okay, sounds perfect. What are they building here? Oh, we don't know yet. We don't have an answer.
Haven't decided yet.
Haven't decided. We're working on it. We're working out the kinks. We had an extra part of the town that's surrounded by a giant wall. It's a giant walled city. You had this extra section. Hadn't quite figured out what we were gonna do with it. We're working on it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So if you have a campaign set in a city, or you have even just like general areas where you're working, and do you like to go down those back alleys? What would you like to put into those kind of like areas that you don't usually explore that are off the beaten path? That would be something.
That's one of my favorite. The entirety of LA was an area I had not explored and was off my beaten path.
That's true. That's true. So everything there was a new experience for you.
And I went to Carl's Jr. twice.
I
did not get in. I did not get in and out though because they did not have delivery, and the closest one was a half hour away.
Yeah. So there is that.
And I was like,
I like that you went to this mysterious place that you'd never been to called LA, and you got Carl's Jr. twice.
It was an experience. It was so good. McDonald's needs to go away. I want Carl's Jr. over here.
I always love it when people like go someplace and then it's like, oh, here's a chain. Like a chain restaurant that was in the area.
Most of what we got wasn't chain, but Carl's Jr. was pretty good.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Like, we got it the first day because it was right next to our hotel, and I got it the last day because it was right next to the hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Hey, that's okay. There are chains around here that you don't have elsewhere, and then I go somewhere else, and I'm like, what's this place?
Hey,
yeah,
I did have food that I bought on the Santa Monica Pier.
Oh.
World famous Santa Monica Pier.
So there you go. He's a man of culture now. No, he's still not that. But, it was worth a try.
You've probably seen the Santa Monica Pier. You played GTA.
Yes, I have.
You've seen the Santa Monica Pier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's not call it the Santa Monica Pier.
We went...
Yeah.
No, but it is the Santa Monica Pier.
Yeah.
We went early in the morning. It was pretty empty, which was kind of cool.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
We've got pictures with, nobody in them.
Perfect! That sounds like a fascinating picture.
It's very liminal.
The liminal space known as LA. Liminal Angeles.
I did actually take a bunch of pictures that were pretty liminal in LA, which is crazy for it being Los Angeles.
Maybe at some point we'll share them with our folks out there. If you have any thoughts about what you might do to flesh out a city or an area, and if you've populated it with the stuff in the past, let us know in the comments down below.